Welcome to all my beautiful, fabulous, and fashionable fashionistas out there, and I hope life is treating you all well. Now, on this episode, I will be chatting about how yoga blocks can be used to prevent injury and can be used to build confidence. But before we get into this episode, here is a quick recap of what we have talked about in episode 4. So far, I have talked about how yoga blocks can be used instead of reaching your hands to the ground, and how yoga blocks can be used to release tension when you relax into a pose, and how by using yoga blocks you can achieve a more intense stretch. But before we get into this podcast episode, I just like to say that before you use yoga blocks for yoga or participate in any form of exercise, please check first with your doctor to make sure it's okay for you to take part in yoga. Now, what you do is go and book yourself an appointment at your local GP surgery so that a professional team of general practitioners can assess your capabilities and make sure you are fit to participate in yoga or any form of exercise. You must tell your doctor if you have any injuries, health concerns, or if you are pregnant. So now, having said all of that important stuff, without further ado, let us get into this podcast. Using yoga blocks to reduce pressure on muscles and joints. Did you know that using yoga blocks can reduce pressure on your muscles and joints? So, now that you know what the answer to that question is, then you will be glad to know that using yoga blocks assists in avoiding stress injuries on the muscles and joint ligaments. As I have already discussed on a previous episode, the way the yoga blocks works is to reduce injuries and to modify yoga postures, particularly postures that are difficult to maintain or control. And so it goes without saying that it is a sensible idea to use yoga blocks, as there will be less of a chance of developing a stress injury by unintentionally forcing a yoga pose. For instance, performing the pigeon pose requires a considerable amount of pressure, as it is a pose that requires a lot of flexibility in the outer thigh area. This is because the pigeon pose puts the knee in a vulnerable position, particularly if you are an absolute beginner yogi. The problem here with this pose is the weight of your upper body is positioned up and over your knee, and in so doing this pose, it creates an additional weight on the knee joint, which can possibly cause an injury to the knee. So the solution to prevent injury is to simply place a block under your hip. Just by placing a block under your hip, this can considerably reduce the pressure on your knee joint. Another yoga pose that requires a reduction in pressure is called the camel pose, which is known for providing a great back bend and heart opening stretch, right? But the question here is, what happens when you attempt to perform this pose without the yoga block, particularly if you have limited spinal flexibility? Well, the basic answer here is it can cause damage to the lower back. So, if you want to perform this pose to reduce lower back injury, then place the yoga block. Place the yoga block on either side of your legs. And just by placing these blocks on either side of your legs will go towards protecting your lower back and can considerably reduce the risk of injury to your back. I have tried this pose myself and I still have a long way to go to lift my upper thighs into a straightened position. How does yoga blocks build your confidence? Now, the final topic of interest in this episode is about understanding how yoga blocks can build your confidence while trying out new yoga techniques. Trying out new yoga techniques is essential in your spiritual journey of therapeutic yoga and self realization. A complete understanding of therapeutic yoga and self realization will be engaged on an up and coming podcast episode. So look out for that podcast episode, right? So, anyways, where was I? So, this is why a yoga block is a good prop to have around, particularly if you want to take the next step in your yoga journey. So, right now, if you are beaming with confidence and have done yoga on the regular, then congratulations, for you have now officially started your yoga inner exploratory journey. Now you are on your way to perform more complex poses and restore certain poses that you thought were an impossible dream of yours. Your dream, and pardon the pun, has come restoratively true. You should be proud of yourself. You should be proud of yourself because currently you have found that yoga blocks have assisted you with stretching, strength training, and with agility. And if you are an absolute beginner yogi practitioner and have been practicing on the regular and have managed to perform that restorative stretch that you always wanted to achieve, then that is the best confidence building exercise for you ever, right? It is a confidence builder because you are closer to achieving that all important stretch, be it the splits or the pancake pose. Now that you have accomplished your stretching goals and you fully understand how to do restorative poses successfully, then now is the time to set your sights on more intermediate to advanced yoga poses. This means that certain yoga poses that you may have deemed as too difficult to maintain or support can be done because you have the mental confidence to initiate that pose. Having said all of that, all you yogis out there should know that your own personal safety is of vital importance when performing yoga with or without a yoga block to assist you, right? This means that part and parcel of restorative yoga is not only having that additional stretch, but also it opens the opportunity for you to try more intermediate and advanced poses. So, here again, I reiterate that yoga blocks are a great prop to advance your individual progress, but you may need assisted guidance, particularly with poses that you may deem as more difficult to perform alone. By having an experienced person around who understands your yoga journey so far can be helpful, particularly if you want to use yoga blocks for certain yoga poses such as crow pose and headstand. Look, do not be discouraged if you cannot find assistance at all, because in time and with experience, you will be able to know how to perform challenging yoga exercises safely without assistance. Basically, put, keep going. There is something there in what you are doing. Now, I'm coming on to the words of advice. This episode is now drawing to an end. But before I go, I'd just like to give you some words of advice and encouragement. And this advice is above all the best advice given to me, and it was said to me by my yoga class instructor. And it was, do not forget to breathe. Now, this comment was mostly said whenever I had to hold a leverage yoga pose. And at the time, this comment sounded funny, and yes, I had a giggle about how absurd that comment sounded about. But holding a leverage yoga pose for long periods of time is no joke and can be particularly challenging for rookie yogis as well as for the most seasoned yogis. So there I was, holding this yoga pose, thinking about what was said, which was, don't forget to breathe. To me, that remark sounded as advice to give, because I thought, if I do not breathe, I cannot stay alive. But if you are new to yoga, then know this. Holding a pose can literally take your breath away. And holding your breath is a natural response to holding a pose for longer than you are comfortable to hold. Trust me, I have been there too, as I know full well what it means to hold a yoga pose beyond my limitations. Simply put, what you are not accustomed to can literally take your breath away, which I have found out on numerous yoga practices. Holding this pose for long made me feel faint, which resulted in me staggering around my exercise mat, gasping for air, and feeling lightheaded and a little stupefied. At the time, it sounded silly hearing that remark, but on reflection, it was proper sound advice. So, whenever you hear the yoga instructor say out loud to breathe, you got to breathe. But seriously though, feeling lightheaded in an awkward position has put in perspective the practicalities of getting the right breathing technique together. And in order to adequately perform more challenging yoga poses, I need to know how to inhale and exhale when holding a pose. I also needed to time my breaths while shifting my posture from one pose to another. So this is something you gotta think about, guys, alright? So do not feel disheartened or discouraged by setbacks, because with regular practice, breathing techniques will come easy without you realizing it. I encourage you to practice at least 3 times per week, doing 3 different leverage yoga poses. Try that out. So, all in all, having yoga blocks in your life can be a complete game changer for you, in that it can be of incredible assistance for you in bringing your body, mind, and spirit back into balance and harmony. This episode 5 on using yoga blocks for reducing pressure on muscles and joints and how to build confidence with yoga blocks has come to an end. And in next week's 7th and final podcast episode, I will be chatting about the different types of yoga blocks and yoga equipment that you can buy at your local shopping mall. Thank you for listening, and I am sorry you cannot subscribe to this channel, even like or dislike this podcast as for episode. So goodbye until we meet again.